back for another casual conversation with the classic, and I'm here, guys, with none other than the American Dragon himself. Round 3 with Brie Danielson. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm in Vancouver. I couldn't be better.
I know. And you're in Vancouver on a nice sunny day.
Yeah.
You guys are here for the first ever AEW show in Vancouver, AEW Collision.
Yep.
You're in a tag team match with Claudio, your Blackpool Combat Club brethren, against Top Flight.
Yep.
It's a big week. It's a big weekend for you all.
Yeah.
For us in Vancouver, I guess.
Yeah. So it's a big week for me too, because I love being in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And it's also my first match since I wrestled Will Ospreay, because I kind of hurt my neck in that match. So
we'll talk about Will Ospreay, but I do want to talk a little bit more about Vancouver, because you do have a history here.
Yeah.
Being from Aberdeen, you did come up wrestle here a lot at ECCW.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of research. I went looking back. You wrestled Aaron Idol. You wrestled Nelson Creed. There's a whole 2-hour video of your matches on YouTube here.
Yeah.
But you haven't really wrestled in Vancouver with AEW since you've been with that company.
Yeah.
And the thing about AEW is I feel like you get to wrestle more your style.
Mm-hmm.
So it almost feels like the Brie Danielson of old is back in Vancouver finally.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah. I'm really excited. It's just because too, the wrestling fans here are just fantastic, right? So yeah, I'm pumped just being in the area. It's almost like being around, for example, just in the Pacific Northwest and the fir trees and the mountains and everything. It just gives me I was just talking to somebody about this, about how, as humans, we like to divide things, right?
Yeah.
We like to, here's a border. So here's this border between you and me. That's Canada, and this is the United States, right? But there really is no line.
No.
And especially where I grew up, I feel like me and people in British Columbia are more the same than me and people in New York City.
100%.
Right? And so it's so I feel, and especially when you look around, it's the same environmental landscape. And
the nature, the mountains.
Oh.
We have the situations here and down in Washington. As far as you're on the highway, at some point you're gonna hit some random lakes.
Yeah.
You're gonna be in the mountains somehow. And you're like, this is crazy. I had a friend that actually just came here from Ontario. He's a professional wrestler, Dan Marsh. He actually interviewed me, you with me the first time virtually.
Oh, okay.
He's wrestling now, but he came down here to hang out, and he was like, and I didn't realize because I actually haven't been to Ontario for a minute, and he's like, dude, you guys have so many mountains. And I'm like, oh, you take that for granted when you live somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Because I live here, and I'm like, oh, we do have some. I'm at Safeway, and I just see nothing but mountains. I'm like, that is crazy.
Yeah, so it's really bizarre, because the first time that I did a show in the Pacific Northwest with people who weren't from the Pacific Northwest, they would say, oh my gosh, look at how tall these trees are. I was like, really? I suppose they are tall. But then Brie and I lived in Arizona for a long time, and there's not really many tall trees.
So
it's fascinating.
That's exactly what happened to me, especially I spent a lot of time in Southern California, and then I went there after he came. I went there in March, and I was like, oh, that is true. There's a lot of mountains here, and there's a lot of that.
Yeah, you call that a mountain? I call that a hill.
Yeah, basically. And that's what they have. They have these orangey dead grass hills, and look at this stuff. It's so nice. I'm like, It's all right. I don't know.
Look at that beautiful mountain. I'm not sure you and I are using the same words for the same things.
The wrestling scene has changed so much in the Pacific Northwest since you were on the independent scene. Mm-hmm. We've seen the boom of Defy, obviously. There's 4 or 5 companies here in Vancouver now, and they're all doing well. That's why I think AEW will be fine, because every show's sold out here when there's an independent show. How do you feel about the change in the independent scene here? And have you wrestled the Defy yet?
No, I haven't. So I don't know. It's hard for me to do independent shows right now, just with how my schedule is, and being a dad of 2 kids, and I place being a father as more important than my wrestling, right? And so it's so when you keep track of your priorities, it's okay, I'm already gone X amount of time. Do I want to be gone more time so I can do this independent show that's essentially just fun for me?
Yeah.
Brie did not get upset at me. I don't want to say she got upset at me, but she was questioning me wait a second, what, are you doing Arena Mexico just for fun? And I said, yeah. But it's also okay, well, now, that's extra time. And she didn't give me, because she knew that I wanted to.
Yeah.
It's something that I've always wanted to do, is wrestle in Arena Mexico. But it's doing independent shows also from like a Tony Khan perspective. If I get hurt doing an independent show, like
It messes up a lot.
Yeah, it messes up a lot of stuff. So it's like, so I haven't done Defy, there's also a company in Portland that's doing some cool stuff. It seems like they put their shows up on YouTube.
I think you're right.
Like
is it Prestige? I might be wrong.
Yeah, I think it's Prestige.
Yeah.
They do the Cascadia Cup. They just did Daniel McCabe and Zack Sabre Jr.
That's
think.
awesome.
Yeah.
McCabe's dope too. He's like, a lot of people probably don't know who Daniel McCabe is. Like, check him out. You guys know who Zack Sabre is. But,
yeah.
but,
Well, and it's interesting because I heard Daniel McCabe was retiring this. Was retiring this year, and I was like, oh, that would be a cool one.
It would, yeah.
And so it's like,
you put it out there now. We'll see what
yeah.
happens.
So it's like, so there's but yeah, I think having the scene here, the interesting thing is when I was doing like independent wrestling here, and especially like when I first came here in 2001. So I had gotten let go from the WWF. I was in the WWF developmental system, and I came here, and I was going to college, and I was working 2 jobs, and ECCW was running like 150 shows a year.
Yeah.
And so like on any weekend that I wasn't booked on the East Coast, they would book me for like 3 shows, and it was great. And it like and there were some veterans here and that sort of thing, and it was really interesting because there were some guys there that were really, really good, and I was shocked when I got there and I saw how good they were. Like somebody like Chance Beckett, you know what I mean? And then I saw how good they were. I was like, how does nobody know who these guys are?
I remember like maybe like 6 years ago or something, I was listening to a podcast. It might have been Jericho's or something, and they had a couple of guys from, maybe it was the Singh brothers of Bollywood Boys, but they're like, it sucks because there has been a stigma that like, oh, this is like the black hole of wrestling to a sense. You need to go out and wrestle other places to get noticed. Yeah. But I think that's changing a lot in the past 5 years.
Yeah. Well, and with the accessibility of the internet,
social media, and YouTube
and all that kind of stuff. So for example, like I became aware of the Cascadia Cup.
Yeah.
That you can watch on YouTube for free. Yeah. And I watched a couple of matches. I was like, oh, this is really good. Some of these guys are really talented. You know what I mean? And so it's like, but it's interesting when you talk about, because there's not just one black hole of wrestling. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you look at in another opposite end of the continent. But if you look at the Maritimes, right, the guys that would wrestle in there were actually very, very good, and they're doing a ton of shows. Yeah. So they're getting better all the time, all that kind of stuff. Nobody knew who they were. You know what I mean? And so it was like, that's where guys like Bobby Roode, they
came out of.
Yeah, that's where those guys came out of. And I didn't even know it existed until I went to England in 2003. Yeah. And a couple of the guys from the Maritimes would come over, and they were great.
That's amazing.
And so I was like,
that's nuts. It's crazy because I just interviewed Kyle O'Reilly not too long ago too, and like, it's like I even gave him a list of the people he worked with, and I'm like, it's so nuts. Like, there's so many good people here, but they just didn't get that spotlight. Yeah. But let's talk about the Arena de Mexico stuff, because like the first time we talked was when you first kind of came to AEW, and you had all these things you want to check off your list. It was a big deal for you to go wrestle in Japan. You've done that. It was a big deal for you to go wrestle in Mexico, to wrestle Blue Panther. You did that. What's on this checklist now? Because you wrestled Ospreay, you wrestled Shibata, you wrestled Okada, you wrestled Yuji Nagata. Like, what's like Zack Sabre Jr.? You got that match in Seattle. Like, what's left on the checklist?
The big one is Wembley. Okay, you know what I mean. I want to make it to Wembley. My contract actually expires before Wembley.
Oh, okay.
But I want to make it to Wembley. Yeah. You know what I mean. And so it's like, that was just because as a wrestling fan. One, last year's All In was incredible, right? But then as a wrestling fan, that's like a defining moment. When the British Bulldog beats Bret Hart, right? It's so you think of Wembley almost in these mythical terms, and the same. It's not the same thing as like, for example, Arena Mexico or the Tokyo Dome or anything like that, in the sense of these are traditional wrestling places, and especially like Arena Mexico, you know what I mean? As far as having run, like, there's 3 shows a week there every year for the last 60 years or whatever, and so, but I really want to be able to do Wembley and just see what that's like, see what that feels like.
100%.
So yeah, that's a big one for me. I'm not sure if I'll make it, but one thing that would be a nice way to like kind of close everything out for me is to do my last match as a full-time wrestler at Wrestle Dream at the Tacoma Dome.
Yeah.
Like, we're doing the Tacoma Dome because that's the first wrestling show I ever saw.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it was...
What was the show?
It was WWF,
Yeah.
and it was Ultimate Warrior versus Rick Rude in
That's
the
so
main event.
cool.
And
Yeah.
it's the first time my sister ever saw a male butt cheek. My dad talked about it till the day he died. The Ultimate Warrior sunset flips Rick Rude.
Yeah.
Rick Rude's back and butt are facing directly towards us. And then Ultimate Warrior pulls down his pants. We see his butt cheeks, and my sister's cheeks go bright red. My dad howled about that until the day he died.
We saw way too much of Rick Rude's and Shawn Michaels' butt cheeks in the early days.
So, you know, and it's really interesting because that's you know, there's the way that people associate my independent wrestling career as this very serious Ring of Honor guy, but then there's, you know, I like also to have fun.
Yeah.
And there's also there's a lot of matches, and I don't know what's out there or what's not out there, but there's a lot of matches where I might spend, you know, 30 seconds or longer with my butt cheeks out and not knowing, and just be like, shut your mouth, kid, and then like, your butt's out, shut your mouth, I don't care what, I love it.
It pops the crowd. They love it.
Yeah,
They want to laugh at you. It gives them a good time.
Yeah.
You talked about Wembley. You talked a little bit about Ring of Honor right now. He's always talking trash about you on commentary. Would Nigel be like a dream match for you at Wembley? Is that something you'd love to do, to run that back one last time? If he can. I mean, he's cleared. I think he's mentioned he's cleared before.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because it's obviously, like, I would love to wrestle Nigel. I get afraid of fan expectations.
Yeah.
Of what it would be.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and I don't know how many people have actually seen our matches. You know what I mean? But it's like, they were very physical matches. Right?
I remember. I watched them.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's, you know, I guess that you know, that's the thing that I would be afraid of is people's expectations of what they think it should be. You know what I mean? It's like if, you know, not that they would do it now, but if they did it when they were like 55. Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, but by the way, I would bet at 55 with both of them, it would be fantastic. Yeah. But, you know, because Ricky Steamboat is just unbelievable still. Like, we've had him.
Yeah.
You know,
you got to work with him with the strap match.
Yeah, in the strap match. And he was just there for Revolution for Sting's last match, right? He's great, just great, and he's in great shape, all that kind of stuff. But
he can still do a mean arm drag.
Yeah, I'm sure he could. And he's still. I bet he bench presses more than me.
Oh, that's
right.
crazy.
Yeah. So it's like, so yeah. I mean, he's in great shape. But I guess that would be my big fear is fan expectation.
But you've been in that position so many times, whether it was against Ospreay, Okada, Zack Sabre Jr. Like, people came in there with big expectations. Like, I know this one comes with a lot of history. Those are first time evers, but you're pretty good at exceeding people's expectations.
Yeah, it's yeah. I guess that, but I mean, you know, I guess it's hard. What's hard is, and this is what I felt with the Okada match.
Yeah,
it was really the first Okada match at Forbidden Door. And is that after, you know, the shows are so long, and then after you see a match like Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega, and the fans are drained, it's you know, it's very hard to get them to
get back there to
the next level. And internally, I don't feel like I did. Right. You know, like if I were to look at that, I was like, okay, I didn't do what a main event needs to do. And I don't politic much, but I politic so hard for Ospreay and Kenny to be on last. Yeah. Right. Because I was like,
can't follow it.
Yeah. It's such a hard thing to follow. So it's like, so that's the, you know, I guess that's the thing. You do Wembley and, something like that. If you were to do Wembley with me and Nigel, the nice thing is we wouldn't be the main event for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So if we could go on first or second, that'd be
first
great.
would be amazing. Yeah, you just get to chill and watch the rest of the show. Like,
well, and that's honestly, it's my favorite thing. Yeah. I tell Tony that all the time. Yeah. Is like, I'd love to go on or not even first, you know, because first is, if you're not last, first is the best.
No, I used to be like that with school presentations.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I go first, if anyone does better than me after, then that bar moves. I didn't set it. I set it where it was, and then if it keeps moving, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. But like, but to be able to, what I love is to be able to go on early and then to watch the rest of the show. Yeah. It was such a blessing at Revolution. I wrestled Eddie Kingston, and I forget what number we were. We were maybe second or third. I don't remember. But I got to go out like, and stand kind of in the crowd to watch Sting's last match.
Yeah.
And be a fan and just experience it as a fan in the arena would experience it. And like, as opposed to being like, I was backstage at Sting's last match. No, I was in the arena watching it live. Yeah, it's awesome.
To be amongst the crowd sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, in the context of selling tickets for tomorrow's show, that's to me what it's about. It's like this feeling in the arena when you're at an incredible show. Like, there's nothing like it.
We've had that discussion, but I actually just had it with Kyle too. I was like, even if you were a wrestling fan back in the day, don't watch that often anymore, or you've never been at a wrestling event, there's something special about when you come to a show and then you go through the curtains and you see that ring down there. It's just cool.
Yeah.
And then you see everybody else excited. Like, I'm not the biggest, like, say, baseball fan, but I'll go to baseball games for the atmosphere and eat a hot dog and hang out and be like, this is great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So my sister doesn't like wrestling.
Yeah.
She loves coming to the shows.
Oh, 100%.
And she brings my nieces and stuff like that because of the experience of it all, right? They love it. So, yeah.
How are you feeling since the Ospreay match? You got dropped in your head?
Yeah. My neck hurts.
Yeah.
So,
great match, by the way.
Oh,
incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, like, I'm having some issues with my neck. There was a thing where I gave him a Frankensteiner and he landed on his feet, and they're like in the background. Nobody noticed it, I don't think, at the time.
No, everyone started noticing that after. And was like,
maybe
it wasn't the move. It was probably that.
I'm not on social media much, but yeah.
Shout out to Meech.
Yeah. So, but when I did, I just landed right on my head, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't know. And so, I've needed some time after that to, but okay, it's in the MRIs. I'm okay, right? But like, how do I feel on a day-to-day basis? My neck is like, but the interesting thing, one of the things that, and I don't know if this is good or if this is bad, but you come to see pain as just perception, right? It's just like it's a perception, right?
You're as hurt as you feel.
What's that?
You're as hurt as you feel mentally.
Yes,
like,
yeah. So, and especially, like, for example, in meditation. So, I get a lot of ulnar nerve pain, which is when you have, I think it's C67, when those are compressed, like, pain that comes down the back of your arm into your pinky and all that kind of stuff. And so when you're sitting in meditation, that doesn't go away. Yeah. And you look and you go to examine, what is that?
Yeah.
What is that? And so we identify it as bad and negative, but those are also mental constructions of what it is. It's just a signal that something is going to be checked. Yeah. And so it's like when you look at it in that, and I've started to see pain as that more and more as I've gotten older and that sort of thing. And I find it to be a very useful paradigm as far as how I look at pain, because it can also be like, okay, that means this needs to be fixed, or it means this needs to be done differently, or all those different sorts of things.
Yeah, it's a signal.
Yeah, it's a signal.
Yeah, I agree with you. The worst pain that I can't stand, I will tolerate a lot of pain, but okay, just brush off, but anything inside my mouth is the worst. Like, I can't stand a toothache. My whole head starts hurting. It's so brutal.
Yeah. So my son cut his lip so bad.
Yeah.
Like, it was just his mouth was bleeding buckets. He's 3.5 years old. And then he wants chips and salsa. And I was like, you're not going to like this. And he eats the chips and the salsa. And he goes, Daddy, that hurts. And then he eats another one. And then he eats another one. And by the end of it, he was fine with it.
Yeah.
He just accepted the pain in his mouth. And I was like, that seems horrible.
Tough kid. You know what? I was going to bring it up later before we wrapped up, but I'll bring it up now since you brought up Buddy. In our first interview, he was doing bear hugs. And the second interview we did at the Rio Theater here in Vancouver, he's doing double leg takeovers. How's his progress now? What's he up to?
Yeah. So, I mean, now
double leg takedowns. My bad.
Yeah. So now he's, and especially when I told, this was going on before I hurt my neck with Ospreay, but and I said, you need to stay away from my neck. He loves jumping on my back and choking me.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like, and this is the bad thing. Is it a bad thing? I don't know if I don't know if it's a bad thing. It'll be bad if he does it to other people. It's not bad if he does it to me. But teaching him how to properly choke, right? And so it's like, so he gets in there and he can get like, I told him, I said, it's not good enough it's not good enough to be around my face. You've got to be under my chin if you want to choke me. If you're going to actually try to properly hurt daddy, you've got to do that, or you have to face lock me. He doesn't understand that part of it. He doesn't understand the idea of like rub this and then getting it to get to where my neck can't bend anymore. So it's like, so I was trying to teach him that, but that was a little so yeah.
We're at chokeholds.
What's that?
We're at chokeholds now.
Yeah.
The next time I talk to you, we'll see where we're at. Maybe.
Yeah. But I think, any of these, it's not the number, it's the mastery, right? So I really need him to...
The skill.
Yeah. The mastery of a certain thing. So, for example, if you can master one thing, so for example, like a guillotine, like if he gravitates, and I don't even know if he's going to like submission wrestling the way that I do, but if he gets good at, for example, like something like a guillotine, okay, well then I'll teach him to crush people's trachea, and then my daughter, because we're making sure that she knows self-defense. And the other day, I made a joke, and I shouldn't have made this joke because my daughter's very sensitive, that if she said something about somebody threatened her something at school, and it was like, like they chop her hand off.
Oh, okay.
Something like that, right? And I said, well, if anybody does that to you, sweet girl, I will gouge their eye out with my thumb. Oh, and she was like, oh, Dad, can you do that? And I said, yes, I can. I can and I will. And then she was like, well, how does that, I mean, she's horrified, but she also was like, how does that work? And I said, okay, well, you use your thumb, you go in from the outside of the eye, and then you dig it out. Yeah. And then, it's just so.
That's insane. These kids are going to be dangerous. Like, do not mess with Brian's kids. Young people watching this, if you ever meet them, do not think that either one of them won't gouge your eye out, or choke you out, or bear hug you, or hit you with a double leg takedown.
Right,
But that's good, though. They should know this stuff. I feel like, it's rough out there in the world of social media and stuff.
I mean, so violence is not the answer. Yeah. Right.
No, 100%.
And I tell them that all the time. But they're just very interested in what I do. Yeah. Right. And the idea. And then especially for our daughter, I'm very interested in her being confident in defending herself in case something happens.
100%.
But my daughter, so I have to be very careful with my son because he tends to be an aggressor, right?
Viking.
Yeah. So it's like, so he's an aggressor. With my daughter, she is not an aggressor. She's a pacifist like me, in the sense of, like, most people think, like, when I tell people about how Buddy is, our son, and he's like, oh, that sounds just like you. It's like, no, he's not like me at all. He's Brie. Yeah. He is Brie. Birdie is me. Yeah. Birdie is me, and she's very, like, laid back. She's very thoughtful. Yeah. She, like all that kind of stuff. And so, like, she's not prone to, like, being overly upset about things, and so or aggressive. And so she's the one that we really feel like, okay, she's going to need to know how to protect, because with Buddy, if somebody starts, like, being mean to him,
he's ready to go.
He's ready to go. We got to stop him. We got to stop him from being that. With our daughter, one of the big things is, like, is being able to stand up for herself, protect herself when we're not around.
Don't let anyone take advantage of your kindness and your passiveness. 100%. You brought up Brianna. We heard Nicole in the news a couple of months ago about wanting to potentially come to AEW and talk to Tony Khan. Does Brie have any interest in wrestling again?
So I think no. Also, they tell me things that happen on social media that I don't even know are happening. So this actually happened. I mean, this happens to me all the time. The people will come, like, people within wrestling. This happened. I was on the plane with Tony Khan and a couple other wrestlers, and they brought up the incident that happened with Ric Flair this weekend, right? I was when it was the first time I'd heard about it, and this was like Tuesday night, right? And so I was like, oh. And then they bring up these other events. Yeah,
things that happen.
Things that happen that people may be talking about on social media. I'm completely oblivious to any of them, So it's like, so anyways, so I just know vaguely about this from Brianna and Nicole, and what they said is nobody actually listened to the full
context.
Statement.
That's a big thing on the internet.
Yeah,
nobody listens to the full context.
Nobody listens to. Yeah, so it's like, it was something like this. Oh, like seeing this, seeing Mercedes Moné come out made me want to, get back in the ring in AEW.
Yeah.
And then, so that's where the context ends for everybody else. And then she says, but I can't imagine leaving my son being on the road or whatever
100%.
it is. So it's like, and I think that's where Brie's at. I think that's probably where Nicole is at, in the sense of like, yeah, you see it, and it's an exciting time for women's wrestling.
Yeah.
And, but then it's also like, okay, my responsibilities as a mom, these other things that they have to do, So I don't know if we'll, I think Brie would love to get in the ring like one or two more times, or maybe more, but never on like a
full-time basis.
Never on like a weekly thing, never more than just like a kind of a one-off here or there. You know what I mean?
Last two questions. You've teased it a bit that this is your last contract you're going to sign. You've said that to me in the past. Are you done after this contract ends, or are you just slowing things down?
No, I mean, to me, it's just like it's my last time as a full-time wrestler. And I honestly don't, I don't want to be, I don't want wrestling to be one of my top priorities anymore, in the sense of getting in the ring and doing it, like helping maybe with stuff on the back end of it. I'd love to do that if that's something that AEW is interested in. But the idea of like, because it's not just like, okay, oh, well, you could do a couple matches a year. But if you do that, and especially with my history of injuries and that sort of thing, you have to keep your body ready all the time, because you can't just go from guy who walks around on the street to doing, and especially with fan expectations. So I mean, to me, I don't think Tony would likes this answer, right? But it'd be like, oh, it'd be fun to just show up at a Defy show unannounced, and just wrestle, right? And then where people were just happy to see me, and I don't have to do anything like that's going to hurt my body too much. You know what I mean? And so, because there's a lot of stuff that I will need to do after I'm done with this run, to get my body to where, my son, like I said, he's a more aggressive. I first tried to take my dad down when I was 15 years old. Yeah. When Buddy's 15, I'll be 55. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to, and he's strong. He's a strong kid.
God forbid he wants to become a wrestler himself one day.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, I'm fine with that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I've said this multiple times. What I want for my kids is to find anything that they love as much as I love wrestling. Yeah. Like wrestling, this being my job has been such a blessing for my life. Like, how many people don't like their jobs, right? Or whatever it is.
Doing it to make ends meet, but they don't really want to do it.
And it's like, and it's like, and and obviously there's hard parts. There's parts that you'll complain about. There's all that kind of stuff. But being able to do something that I love doing for 25 years is like, like I pray my kids get that, whatever it is, whether it's wrestling, whether it's architecture, whether it's being a teacher, right? Like anything that they love doing, that they've fallen in love with, and then the idea of that, that there's so many things that you could fall in love with, so it could, if it's wrestling, great. If it's something else, great.
Yeah. But you want to be ready when he jumps on you.
Yeah.
Quick note before the last question is May 26th, Double or Nothing, Anarchy in the Arena. You're in the match again. Just to let you know, you've been in every Anarchy in the Arena match. You might as well start coining yourself as Mr. Anarchy in the Arena at this point.
What am I doing to myself?
But very, very last question. I like to ask this to everyone at the end. You're back in Vancouver, somewhere you came to a lot when you were starting out in your career. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you've made your younger self proud?
Oh, gosh. I don't know.
If you thought to that Bryan Danielson.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's things that I regret, like everybody else. I'd like to think so. It's just interesting because you have, because a lot of times people will look at it from like a success point of view, how the world views success, right? In the sense of like, oh, Bryan Danielson accomplished more than anything. Way more than 13-year-old Bryan Danielson ever thought he could accomplish, right? But then you're also looking at, okay, well, one of the big things that hit me really hard was when my dad died. And it made me think, like, I made a mistake, right? Like, this whole thing, because in doing it, the idea is you do it, but then you'll always be able to go home. Like, all this time I've spent away from my family and my friends and all that kind of stuff. And then when it's done, then I'll go home, and then I'll be able to get to spend this quality time with my father, with my mom, with, you know, my friends, all this kind of stuff. And then my dad, who there was no indication that he would passed away unexpectedly at 57. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, like,
yeah,
fuck.
You didn't get that time. You can't get that time back.
You can't get it back. You can't take it back. But that said, I am very, very happy with my life now. Like, I think, you know, I think one of the things within perspective, and I guess this is the thing. I don't know if looking back, you could go so many different routes, right? Yeah. So and it's what, you know, the butterfly effect thing. One thing changes and then all of this changes, or one 100%. Thing changes and this changes, or one thing changes as far as this changes. And so that said, I'm very happy with how my life has turned out, right? 100%. But I hate to go back and be like, oh, would the 13-year-old version of yourself think like, oh, good for you? It's like, I'm sure, but who knows? Because because I also had like a different mindset as far as what everything in the world was, and so yeah. And
then also with wrestling, you met your wife, and now you got children, and it's like, you know.
And the idea of like, you know, Mother's Day is coming up on Sunday, and the idea of having a wife who's so understanding because she's been through it. Yeah. As far as this, and like how much time she has to spend on lone parent duty because I'm doing this, right? And like, and doesn't. So yesterday I missed my daughter's 7th birthday, right? So my daughter turned 7 yesterday.
Wasn't that the whole thing, to finish by her 7th birthday?
No. It's when she's 7, because that's what when she's 7, not on her 7th birthday. Yeah. But like, because she knew when she was 7, that's when my contract expired. Yeah. And she's like, Daddy, when, you know, will you be done after that? Yeah. And then will you be done when I'm 7? And I said, yeah, I'll be done when you're 7. So, yeah. But yeah.
Well, thank you for coming to Two Track Studio, coming to doing this interview in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Back in Stockholm. It's great to talk to you. And we didn't have enough time to talk about Ants in Space.
What? But did we talk about that last time?
We did behind the scenes. We never talked about it on stage. But we went in depth. Like, I don't want to get you started.
She's wrapping us up. Can we talk about Ants in Space?
We can't talk about Ants in Space.
Why can't we talk about Ants in Space?
Maybe next time. It was a great conversation, though. You blew my mind. But it is a very thing. We can't get started.
It doesn't have to be ants. It could be anything that's really small.
Why can't it be though? It's a really we can't get into it though.
Yeah, we can't get into it. It's a teaser for the people for next time.
Yeah, for next time round.
Next time we'll talk about Ants in Space. That will be the first one.
I appreciate
also,
it.
Tickets tomorrow for Vancouver, AEWTix.com.
Rogers Arena guys come through the first time they're in Vancouver, so if you want them to come back, they got to show up. And we don't get a lot of wrestling here. Just generally, like, people don't like to come here that often.
People love coming here.
Oh no, I mean people love coming here, but we don't get shows here that often.
Yeah.
We get like maybe 2 shows from the big companies a year, if anything. And you know, during the pandemic, it was even less. So guys, show up, be loud, make some noise, bring your friends, bring your cousins, bring whoever you want. They'll have a great time. Trust me, some good old wrestling. Brian's wrestling, so you know you're gonna see some heads get kicked in. And yeah, Rogers Arena tomorrow. Get you guys tickets, AEWTix.com. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
My pleasure.
It's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.